No, no. Right, so I've got... Right, so first of all, before I start, thank you, Cliff Pike, for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Darren.
You're more than welcome. So how did you get into commentating? Was it always something that you were always like fascinated about, or what?
No, never had any ambitions to do it at all. Try and cut a long story short, I used to work on Hibs.net, the website, which was run by a guy called Stuart Crowther. And Stuart had an idea about setting up an internet radio station. This was way back in about 2000. And he had put a wee note on the website asking if anybody was interested in it. And he was going to do it on a Saturday morning, basically, from his house. And I thought to myself, well, Saturday mornings, my wife takes my daughter dancing. I'll be sitting watching Soccer AM with Tim Lovejoy and Helen Chamberlain, whatever. I think it was presenting it back then. Why not? Let's go along and give this a bash. So I went along. There was Stuart, myself, and another guy called Andrew Herron. And basically, we just talked about Hibs and played some music and drank cups of tea and ate rolls and sausage and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, it was awful. It was dreadful. If I listen back to them now, they were absolutely dreadful. But we stuck at it, kept doing it. I think we got better. We were getting good audiences on Saturday mornings, and ultimately what it led to was Colin McNeil, the then Hibs commercial manager, heard about it. He asked if he could come on the show, which was called Saturday Live, asked if he could come on and just take some questions from the supporters and so on. So he came on, thought it was great, asked us if we wanted to do it on behalf of the club. We weren't going to turn that down, so ultimately RadioHibs.net became Hibernian Interactive, as it was at the time. That was back in about 2002, and I've been involved in that since it got off the ground. Commentary probably started that, I think it was about 2009 I did my first game. We'll come on to that one a wee bit later.
Quite interesting. Who were your footballing heroes at the time?
When I was growing up as a kid, George Best, and that was before he actually came to play for Hibs. Just thought George Best was an unbelievable football player. From a Hibs point of view, obviously guys like Pat Stanton, absolute legend, and I've been lucky enough to get to know Pat very well as a result of what I do with Hibs, and a nicer guy you won't meet. A guy I would say was probably one of my first heroes was Eric Shadler. Probably you're too young to remember Shades, but I remember my dad took me to a game against St Johnstone at their ground, which was Muirton Park at the time. This was before they moved to McDermott Park, their old ground, Muirton Park. I was probably about 5 years old at the time, and we're watching the game, and the ball got kicked into the terrace and it landed right in front of me. So my dad said to me, pick it up and throw it back. So I picked it up, and Eric Shadler came across. He was going to take the throw in, so I threw the ball back to him, and Shades says, cheers, wee man. And I was just absolutely awestruck. This footballer's sort of saying thanks to me for chucking the ball back to him, So Eric Shadler was another one of my early heroes. And I was fortunate enough as well to see Joe Baker play for Hibs on his return in 1971. I remember saying to my dad at the time, Dad, why is that man wearing white boots? Because white boots and coloured boots weren't a thing back then. Everybody wore black boots. Joe Baker had a pair of white boots on. And my dad said to me, he said, son, that's Joe Baker. He can wear any colour of boots he likes.
Oh, well, that was that. Can you remember your first game that you did for Hibs TV? What was the like? How did it come about?
I think it was a friendly game against Dunfermline in 2009 at East End Park. Hibs won 4-0. We'd been fortunate in that at that point in time, Luke Shanley, who now works for Sky TV, Luke was part of the Hibs TV team in its early stages, and Luke did a lot of the commentaries. He started off doing commentaries for reserve games, and he came along and started doing commentaries, and obviously was fantastic at it. You know, everybody knows now Luke. He's a good Hibby. You see him on the telly with Sky Sports all the time, you know. So he moved on to Sky Sports, and you know, looking for other people to do commentaries. We had a chap called Martin Glancy. Martin sadly is no longer with us. He passed away in 2016, just before Hibs won the Scottish Cup, sadly. Martin did the home games, and I stepped in to do the away games. So we were like that for quite a while. You know, Martin would do home games, I would do away games. Martin unfortunately got you know, sidelined with family issues and what have you, and I ended up doing basically all the games. But the first one that I did, as I say, was a pre-season friendly against Dunfermline, East End Park. Pretty sure it was a 4-0 win for Hibs.
Not too bad for your first game.
Well, it's a pity they've not all been like that, but you've got to take the good with the bad.
Best derby you've commented on?
Been a few. Obviously, there's wins at Easter Road, you know, 3-1 when Jason Cummings scored, Grant Hope scored. David Witherspoon scoring when we knocked Hearts out the cup the year after they'd beaten us in the cup final. We played them at Easter Road. David Witherspoon scored, deflection of Zaliukas, I think. Enjoyed the one not so long ago at Tynecastle where Darryl Horgan scored twice. But funnily enough, probably the best one that I've commentated on is not a game that we won, but it was the game at Tynecastle in the Scottish Cup in 2016 where we drew 2-2. We were 2-0 down with 10 minutes to go. And Jason Cummings obviously scored, and Paul Hanlon scored in injury time. That was just the atmosphere the day that happened was just unbelievable. The Hibs fans behind the goal, the school end, or just the McLeod Street end, were just fantastic. And you know, the ramifications of it, obviously, getting Robbie Nielsen getting his money spinning replay at Easter Road, Hibs going on to win that, and ultimately going on to win the Scottish Cup itself. You know, it was you couldn't have written that one. So you know, that was probably the best one, even though we didn't win it on the day.
We still won it though. Like,
that's it.
With the replay.
Indeed, the replay was pretty good as well, and we all know what happened after that. So,
favourite Hibs player?
Ooh, that's a tough question because I've seen a good few. I would probably plump. I mean, obviously, you've got guys like Frank Sosie and Russell Latipi in there, you know, that are just phenomenal football players. I had a wee soft spot for Matty Jack. I thought Matty Jack was a terrific player. Still stay friendly with Matty to today. Speak to him occasionally. But Pat Stanton, just as a football player and as a person, just had everything. If you cut Pat open, he would bleed green. You know, his middle name should be Hibs. You know, he's everything that you expect from someone associated with Hibs. Just the kind of footballer that played the game the way it should be played, a flair player, you know, terrific captain. Unfortunately, didn't win as much in the game as he probably should have done, but you know, I know people at the time were upset when he signed for Celtic, but for me it was nice that he signed for Celtic. He got a League Championship medal and a Scottish Cup winners medal to go with the League Cup medal that he had won at Hibs, and that gave him a full set from his playing career, because if anybody deserved a full set of medals from Scottish football, it would be Pat Stanton.
Why do I being part of the club?
It's a privilege, to be honest with you, as a Hibs supporter. I mean, my dad came down to Edinburgh from up north in 1961, and he stayed in a wee flat down in New Haven. Used to go for lunch on a Saturday with his uncle, who stayed in Dalgetty Avenue near Meadowbank. And after that, they used to wander round to Easter Road to watch the football. They would either watch the first team if the first team were playing, or the reserve team if they were playing. So they went along every Saturday. My dad became a Hibs supporter. Obviously, when I was born, I was going to be a Hibs supporter as well. You know, and to kind of think back then that I'd be doing what I do now, would never have dreamt of it, you know. But it's a privilege, you know. As I say, I'm lucky enough to be doing a job that every Hibs supporter would love to do. You know, I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time to do what I'm doing now. And you know, it's nice to just kind of wander around the place and, you know, say hello to the players and, you know, the coaching staff, the manager, you know, the directors, whatever. You know, you get to know people, and at the end of the day, the strange thing is they're all just people, just like you and I. You know, although the guys on the pitch play football on a Saturday for Hibs and everybody holds them in high esteem, you know, they're all just dudes. You know, the directors are all just nice, ordinary people. You know, the coaching staff, Jack Ross is just a real nice, down-to-earth guy. All the media staff, you know, guys like Kenny Miller and that, they're just great people, you know. And as I say, I think that's what people don't realise, that because we're all fans, the people actually working for the club are just fans like us, and they're just ordinary people, you know. So it's good. It's good from my point of view. As I say, very lucky, very privileged to do what I do, and I'll never ever take it for granted.
I don't think any of us will ever again.
Indeed.
Does it become more easier the more times you do commentating?
It's hard to say, to be honest with you, Darren. I'm really not sure. I mean, I just go along and just talk about what I'm seeing happening on the pitch in front of me. You know, ultimately what you're trying to do is, it's maybe slightly different at the moment, because most people are watching the game on Hibs TV through Hibs Pass, because we're not allowed into the stadium. But ultimately, you know, we've got a lot of people as well that listen on the radio, that can't actually see or listen through the audio commentary, say Radio Hibs or whatever, that can't see what's happening on the pitch. And you've just got to try and describe the game as it's happening in front of you. You know, let people know where the ball is, you know, who's got the ball, what's happening around them, and stuff like that, you know. So it's not something that I'm conscious of, to be honest with you. You know, I just, each game for me is just a new game. It doesn't matter whether it's a pre-season friendly game against somebody like a Berwick Rangers, or, you know, a cup semi-final or a final. You know, your job is to describe what's happening on the pitch and try and do that to the best of your ability, you know. And I kind of hope I do that, you know. I'm sure people will let me know if I didn't, and one or two have, you know. I mean, it's like everything, you know. Some people will like your style, other people won't like it as much. You know, everybody has their favourite commentator. You know, you can listen to the BBC, for example. You've got guys like Paul Mitchell, you've got Liam McLeod, you've got Rob McLean, you've got John Barnes. All these guys do commentary for the BBC. Everybody will have their favourites, you know. So, you know, that's it. You know, you can't please all the people all the time. I'll always go out, commentate on a game to the best of my ability, try and describe it for the people that are watching and listening. And as I say, hopefully, you know, do it in a manner that most people enjoy.
The hardest game you've done?
Ooh. That's a tough question, that one. Any derby defeat at Tynecastle is never fun. Any defeat at Ibrox is never fun. On the flip side, when you go to Tynecastle and Ibrox and win, it's the best feeling ever. But One that was a really, really hard game that I'll use was the game against Malmo at Easter Road in the Europa League. That was just the most horrible night ever. I think all the build up in that one had been that Hibs had played Malmo before in the Fairs Cup in 1970-71, I think it was, and we'd beaten Malmo 6-0 at Easter Road. And I think across in Sweden we'd lost the game 2-0. We weren't out of it by any manner of means, but it was going to be a tall order because Malmo were a good side, but I don't think anybody saw that happening at all that night. A 7-0 thrashing, and obviously 7's a number that plays large in the horizons of Hibs supporters. We all think of 7-0 for a completely different reason. But when you're on the end, of a 7-0 thrashing, and I think that all the build up to the game had been about Hibs had previously beaten Malmo at Easter Road 6-0. And I think Malmo set out there to absolutely take us apart. They wanted to get 7. They didn't take the foot off the gas at all the whole night. And, they were just a class apart from us. We got a lesson in football that night. And, as a commentator, and particularly as a Hibs supporter, you're trying to stay as upbeat as you possibly can. But, every goal that went in, it just felt that like somebody was punching you square in the stomach. You're trying to describe it, and it's, you just want to be anywhere else other than where we were, and I would probably say that was the toughest one. That was a real sickener that night, the 7-0 game against Malmo.
But it just shows how far the clubs came now.
Yeah, very much so. We'd you look at games, for example, against Brøndby. We were in the Championship at the time, but we drew 1-1 on aggregate. With Brøndby only went out on penalties. So, there's a lot to be said for what's happened in the years since that bad night.
What inspires you?
What inspires me? Probably my late father inspires me. He passed away in 2003, not long after I started doing all of this. And I remember at the time, I'm saying to me, Hibs Interactive, Hibs TV, whatever, nothing will ever come of that, And, I remember not long after he died. He died in March 2003. And December 2003, I was sitting in the ticket office where we had a makeshift studio doing a show with Pat Stanton. And, talking about the Hibs team of the 70s that Pat Stanton played in, Harriet Brownlee, Shadler, Stanton, Blackley, Edwards, O'Rourke, Gordon, Cropley, Duncan, playing music from the time and thinking to myself, if my dad could see me now, sitting here interviewing Pat Stanton, who was one of my dad's heroes as well. And, everything that's happened since then, culminating in the Scottish Cup win in 2016, my dad didn't ever think it was going to come to much. So it'd be nice if I could get the opportunity just to speak with him once more and see what his thoughts were on it now. Can't do that, sadly, but he always inspired me just to kind of go on and do it and be the best that you possibly can. Like a lot of people, I think your dad's your first hero, isn't he? And you want to do well by him. So I'd like to think he's proud of what I've done.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Retired, probably. I really don't know. I've not thought about it, Darren, to be honest. I tend not to think too far ahead. My dad, unfortunately, that I mentioned there, he passed away at just age 61, which is very, very young. And most of the males on my dad's side of the family have passed away in either their mid to late 50s or early 60s. So, I tend to look at it from the point of view of live each day as it comes, because you never know what's round the corner. We know yourself, you're probably a prime candidate that can look back on what's happened to you, and look at you now. You've come through the stroke and what have you, and you're doing great for yourself. So you just never know what's round the corner. I'll bet you didn't ever think that was going to happen to you. I didn't ever think my dad was going to have a heart attack. So you just don't know what's round the corner, mate. So just let's treat every day as it comes. Live it as if it's your last. If I'm still around in 5 years' time, I'll worry about what I'm doing in 5 years' time. In 5 years' time, I think that's probably the best way to look at life.
Top 5 emotional games you've done for Hibs.
Right, obviously the most emotional one, and I don't need to answer that, Scottish Cup final 2016. That was just an unbelievable day from start to finish. It was just the best day of your life ever. And I hope my wife, who's through the lounge, can't hear me saying that. She'd be saying it should be my wedding day. That was my best day of my life ever. But that day was just everything you want in a football match. And to win that trophy at the end of it after 114 years having not won it, just a phenomenal day. The Scottish Cup game at Tynecastle that I mentioned already, the 2-2 game, that was pretty emotional. Exciting, but also emotional. The game against Brøndby, the game in Denmark, was just an unbelievable night. Having lost 1-0 at Easter Road, I don't think anybody gave us a chance when we went over to Denmark, but the Hibs fans that were over there that night, they were behind the team from the word go, and the team were outstanding that night. Won the game 1-0, couldn't win it in extra time, and unfortunately went out on penalties, and I felt heartsick for John McGinn that night. He missed the penalty that was the important one. He'd been absolutely outstanding all night, and I think the time the penalty shootout came round, he was blowing out his backside. He could barely stand on his own 2 feet. If he looks back now, he tried to place the penalty. If he got another go at it, I think he'd probably just try and put his laces through it, but he missed it, and that was us out. But that was a real emotional night. Another one I would say would be the game against Aberdeen in the Betfred Cup in 2015-16. We got to the final to play Ross County. We beat Aberdeen 2-0 at Easter Road. Dominic Malonga scored one of the best goals I've seen at Easter Road. John McGinn just chipped the ball out from the edge of the penalty area to Dominic, who was in the middle of the Hibs half. He just ran the entire length of, half the length of the pitch, selling Aberdeen players dummies here, there and everywhere. What a goal, and just the roar from the stadium when that one hit the back of the net was absolutely incredible. And he was some player, by the way, Dominic Malonga. The penalty shootout against Dundee United at Hampden as well. The semi-final, before we played Rangers in the final. Looking back on that one, that was pretty emotional as well. Conrad Logan, nobody had heard of the guy. He came in and, what a debut, Jason Cummings, Panenka penalty, made a complete of it. And
I can say what you were going to say.
You look at it and you say to yourself, that penalty, he missed that penalty. If he'd scored that penalty, would the game have turned out the same way? Who knows? Dundee United might have opened out a little bit, had a go at us. Who knows what would have happened? So everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? For some reason or another, Jason chose to be daft for one. Not that he had that. It was difficult for Jason to be daft. I think Jason was just daft most of the time. But in a cup semi-final, to be attempting that, but wasn't it fitting that he was the one that scored the penalty that put us into the final? Again, you look at it and you say to yourself, Conrad Logan saved 2 penalties and Jason Cummings is going to step up to score the winning penalty. You wouldn't have got odds on that at a bookies. So that was another emotional game. definitely. So obviously the cup final, the game against Hearts, and the lead up to the cup final, the 2-2 game at Tynecastle, the Aberdeen game in the Betfred Cup, the Brøndby game, and the Dundee United Scottish Cup semi-final. I would say they're right up there amongst the 5 most emotional games. Just for what happened, the roller coaster of them all. You didn't know what was going to happen. They were all on a knife edge, all those games till the very end.
I mean, what Jason done in the first half confused their goalkeeper.
Yep, I would probably agree with you. When you're a goalkeeper, and I was a goalkeeper of no repute when I played football, you know where certain players put penalty kicks. But Jason was always like that. He used to vary it up. He never ever chose the same corner twice. One game, if he took a penalty, he would go low at the bottom right. The next game, he'd go high at the top left. And I think when he stepped up to take the penalty in the penalty shootout, the one thing going through everybody's mind is, surely he's not going to try that again. Having made a mess of it once, he's not going to try it again. And as you say, he just rolled it into the bottom left-hand corner, and the Dundee United goalkeeper just stood rooted to the centre of his goals, because you're right, he's like the rest of us. He had no idea what Jason Cummings was going to do. I don't think Jason Cummings probably had any idea what he was going to do when he stepped up there. That was Jason for you. He was a spur-of-the-moment lad. He might have walked up to the penalty spot thinking, I'm going to absolutely blast this one down the middle at 100 miles an hour. And when he ran up to take it, he then stroked it into the bottom left-hand corner, almost passed it into the bottom corner. So, you never knew what you were going to get with Jason. And, a top lad. And, we're glad we had him at Hibs.
And I would imagine the 2016 Scottish Cup final was a good day to call that game.
Well, it's one of these ones that, no one can take away from me the fact that I was the first Hibs TV commentator to use the words that Hibernian have won the Scottish Cup. I remember the full-time whistle going, and I made the comment, that it's been 114 years now. It's not even been 114 seconds, because it was just, you don't know what to say in that kind of situation, Darren. No one had ever done it before. No one that's alive had ever done it before. So, it's one of these situations that you always dream about. What would I do if Hibs won the Scottish Cup? If I was commentating in that game, what would I say? What would I do? And in reality, you've got no idea. It was all just spur of the moment. The euphoria, myself, Conor Rafferty and Keith Reid, the two guys that were in the co-commentary that day. We were getting some flack from the Rangers supporters that were behind us in the hospitality area as well. They were obviously less than pleased that their team had got beaten, and they were less than pleased that we were over the moon, shouting and screaming in front of them, But that's football for you. They were disappointed. We were delighted. They were giving us a bit of abuse. We weren't going to let it sour the day. It was just an unbelievable moment, to utter those words. Hibernian have won the Scottish Cup, first time in 114 years, never beat that.
No, I think when we got back into the game, there was only one winner.
Mm-hmm. I didn't think we were ever out. I had a good feeling from the moment I got up that morning. I had a feeling Hibs were going to do it. That Hibs team deserved to win something. They'd finished runners up to Rangers in the league, and they'd been absolutely done by Falkirk in the playoff. Fair play to Falkirk, they got through, but I thought over both games Hibs were the better side and probably deserved to get through. Ultimately, if someone had said to you, you can choose between winning the playoff game and, like Falkirk did, getting thumped 4-1 by Kilmarnock in the playoff final, or you can win the Scottish Cup the following week against Rangers at Hampden, pretty sure I know what most Hibs supporters would have said.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have another crack at getting promoted next season. Let's win the Scottish Cup. But I had a good feeling about it the whole day. And even at 2-1 down, Hibs kept on the front foot, kept having a go at Rangers. And, when Stokesy equalised to make it 2-2, at that point in time, I thought, we could still win this in normal time. I think most people would be thinking, we'll take extra time. But Rangers absolutely dead on their feet when Stokesy equalised. I thought, we've got 9 minutes or so here in normal time. Let's have a real go at them. Come on, let's see what they're made of. And sure enough, Liam Henderson to deliver, David Gray, boom, bedlam.
And I think when Rangers had the ball, a tackle that David Gray should have never made, that's what kind of changed it.
Yeah, and I thought at that point in time, I thought he had injured himself. He looked like he was struggling and he had to get treatment, and fortunately he recovered, because again, had he not recovered, what might have happened? He wouldn't have been there to get that baldy napper on the end of Liam Henderson's cross, would he? And
it could have been Louis.
That, who knows? Would it have happened? Would it have gone to extra time? As I say, all happens for a reason, but that's David Gray for you, isn't it? He'd run through brick walls.
First Hibs game you watched before you worked for them?
The first Hibs game I ever watched was Hibs against Falkirk in 1971, I think it was. And Hibs won the game 6-0. And Arthur Duncan scored a hat-trick. Again, I was just a kid at the time, 5 years old, and I thought, it's great, all football games, all Hibs games are going to be like this, Learned a hard lesson since, my first Edinburgh derby was the 7-0 game at Tynecastle. And again, I thought all Edinburgh derbies were going to be like that. The next one I went to was also at Tynecastle, and Hearts beat us 4-1. And my hero, Eric Shadler, scored an own goal with a flying header. So, football is sent to try you, Darren. It's the fun of it. You never know what you're going to get, particularly with Hibs. It'd be brilliant 1 minute, dreadful the next, but we all still love them. We all still go along there and get behind them, and we wouldn't change it for the world.
And how did you become a Hibs fan? You mentioned it was your dad, obviously.
My dad, I blame my dad for the many years of heartache that I've suffered as a Hibs supporter. But, thanks to him, I was a Hibs supporter. I saw them win the Scottish Cup at Hampden in 2016. And an awful lot of Hibs supporters have been born, lived and died and never saw Hibs win the Scottish Cup, Darren, So, proud of that, privileged that I was there to be able to see it. And, as I say, it was my dad, yeah. As I say, he wasn't a Hibs supporter originally. He came down from the north of Scotland. He was born in a wee fishing village called Helmsdale, which is about 50 miles south of John O'Groats, 100 miles or so north of Inverness. Came down to Edinburgh to work in 1961, and as I say, he used to go to the games on a Saturday with his uncle, and he became a Hibs supporter. And when I was born, obviously you follow the team that your dad supports, don't you? So I was indoctrinated into the Hibs way, and there you go.
Well, is when I end it, I'll carry on talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so
carry on, yeah, no problems.
So thank you so much, Cliff, for telling me about your career and good stories.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. As I say, it's great to talk to you.
How many likes should we get?
Who knows? Depends if there's any Jambos or Rangers supporters watching. I don't suppose they'll like it.
Just you call how many likes.
Hey, let's go for 140.
Aye, let's go for 140 likes.